Good, bro. How are you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Beautiful. What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Just cut my run short and I'm just like resting up and taking a break and just chilling the rest of the day and just taking some time for myself in between all the work stuff. Yeah. How
Yeah,
about
yeah, man. I'm doing yeah, I'm kind of doing the same. I'm having a pretty chill day. Did a little bit of a workout this morning. Planning on lifting some weights in a little bit here, but it's gonna be a pretty chilled out day. I'm glad that you reached out to me today, man, because I was like, eh, I was gonna just not do much. I was just like, did my workout this morning, did a little bit of reading. I have to go to the grocery store later. My workout, just kind of a chill out recovery day mentally, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. Just trying to like recharge my battery over here because my girlfriend has a bunch of stuff going on and everything, but it's one of those days where it's like I need to really step back and take some time for myself so that I can be more capable for others, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Dude, it's funny because I remember I was telling you on the phone that my girlfriend does like a lot of my scheduling for me a lot of the time. Like I'll just like let her know when I have to do things and we have like a shared calendar with our phones. So she like can just like put things in my calendar whenever. And this is like the first Saturday in a long time where I've been like, there's nothing in my calendar. So I was like, I think I'm gonna take this day to just chill out a little bit more than I normally do.
Makes sense. You just gotta like take that extra time for yourself, man, just to put yourself in the right place.
Yeah, yeah. Man, what is so you've got a 100 miler coming up this week, right?
Yeah, yeah, like in 7 days. I
Seven
gotta
days from
uh,
today. What does your week look like leading up to 100 miles?
for the last couple of weeks I've kind of been in like a taper kind of chill mode. So it's just like all the runs have been optional. It's just about like keeping my body used to being out there and just kind of keeping the status quo and just more of like listening to the body, getting calories, just getting rest from like all the hard training over the last 3, 4 weeks. And this week I've got one workout type of session where I have to do like kind of a longer tempo run just to like get some spring in my legs and then an easy run. And then after that, like Saturday's just the big dance, man. So yeah, so now it's just the hay's in the barn, and now it's just about like doing all the things that your body needs and getting ready for the work.
Yeah. Do you think about what you'll do after? Or do you just like, is your mind solely focused on what you're doing the day of?
I think it's a combination of things. Like I'm trying to take it one workout at a time, but now I'm starting to think about like the process of like what's gonna go on, what's gonna happen during the race, and just trying like to, because I've done like 4 or 5 of these, and then some of the longer stuff, just trying to like dial my mind into the right position.
Yeah.
And
Sorry?
oh, yeah, and just like I think just focusing more on the mental side of things than the physical, really, because like so much of what we do in that sport is so mental.
Yeah, yeah. I was just wondering, like, when you're like leading up to it and while you're running, like, are you thinking and envisioning yourself? Like, I'm sure that there's like many different times and many different stages. Like, do you think mostly about like visualizing like finishing the run, or do you think about like the things that you'll do, the pleasures you'll have after when you can relax? Like where's your head at when you're doing things like that?
I used to think about like the pleasure of like the achievement and the benefit and like how it's going to bring me some sort of like value that I didn't have in myself, how it's going to be about the things that you gain from the process of the achievement and like putting yourself through the pain. And now I've realized the more I do these, the more I realize that you really have to enjoy the journey to be able to do these. And I think it's more about just when I'm in the race, I don't run away from the fact that it's going to hurt. I, instead of like enjoying the first 50 miles, I really like to focus on the last 50 miles. And I just think about like putting myself through that process of going through that pain again and like what can I gain out of it and just putting in that work and just you seeing where the journey takes you and just enjoying what it has to offer because you just never know when you're not going to be able to either mentally, spiritually, physically be able to do something like this again. And I was listening recently, I don't know if you're familiar with Tim Grover.
Yeah.
I was recently listening to Relentless, and one of the things that he likes to say is pressure is a privilege.
Hmm.
And I was just I'm thinking about that every single time I toe a line. I'm thinking about that in terms of business and life, and just realize that pressure can come from internally too. And I think it's different than stress. And the reason that I put that pressure or there's that pressure on myself is it's not just the weight of the expectations of people from around me. It's the high standard that I set for myself because I know that I'm capable of more. And I think when I'm out there, what makes me really move forward is realizing that feeling that is a privilege because not everybody gets to feel that privilege or be relied on in life. And so I'm definitely thinking about that. And I guess there are also a lot of moments where I can go hours at a time without thinking about absolutely nothing at all. And for an overthinker like me, like that is paradise, where you're just focused on the moment. You're just looking at one foot in front of the other, just you're breathing. That is like one of my favorite things in the whole world too.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. When you find something like that, that can just distract you from all the anxieties or the stresses in life, like it's like you really think about how much of a privilege it is. I remember like just even thinking about the last time where I was like having like a bit of a little like a breakdown where my emotions were getting the best of me, and I had to go outside and just like move and walk around and like I while I was doing that, I was thinking about how much of a privilege it is, like you were saying, to have like an escape, like to have like a mental vacation. So often, like when we get to do our workouts, whatever it could be, whether it is like obviously running or weightlifting or martial arts or yoga or whatever it is for anybody else, right? And it's dude, it is such a crazy thing that it's weird how we all have that experience. Like and it's weird that it's exercise that seems to do it for everybody. You know what I mean?
Hmm. I definitely agree. It's just, I think movement is something that's so innate in us as human beings. And I think it's not only the fact that movement is something that we've been doing for so long that it feels like something that's so natural to us during a time when we're doing so many things that are unnatural to us. I think it's also the fact that like it's something that roots you in the present and makes you focus on the moment. Like I was talking to a friend of mine who does gravel cycling, and they say like they have a phrase. They say, get out of your mind and get into your body."
Mm.
And and I'm like, well, what happens if you stay in your mind when you're on a bike? They're like, well, then you eat shit and you
Yeah.
fall on the ground, you bump into a tree. Like, yeah, same thing with the trail, right? Like you have to watch every step. And I think just being in that moment, realizing that you have control over that makes you feel good because that's the other thing, right? Is like that fear of like not having control. We can't change our past. We can't control our future, but we can choose what we're doing in the present. Let me ask you this. Do you see a difference? What do you think is the difference between pressure and stress?
It's actually funny. I was going to ask you that myself because I was thinking about that. I think if I had to think about what's the difference between pressure and stress, I would think I'm gonna sip coffee strategically at this moment.
I gotta get my own like strategic coffee mug the next time we do this. I just got my
Yeah, yeah.
water bottle.
Dude, that's yeah, strategic, man. I um I would say the difference is like stress. It's been a while since I listened to that audiobook, man, but I would say the difference is that in my own words, stress is something that is like kind of a destructive force, and it's something that can be like kind of multiplied by other people or by the destructive behaviors that like it can cause. Whereas like pressure is something that, they say like pressure creates diamonds. Pressure is it's what creates strengthening procedures, like the repair process. When it's pressure on your joints that keeps your joints strong. Does that make sense? So it's like kind of the resistance, the necessary resistance force that you need to have to develop strength. That would be the best way I could say it.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. It feels like pressure is something that is coming from being relied on. It's coming from your own internal forces reminding you that you are capable of so much more. Um, and for me personally, I think that stress is coming from, again, like that past, future, present thing. It's coming from factors that we can't control. And maybe that's actually it. Maybe pressure is the force you feel from the factors that you can control. And stress is what you feel from the factors that you can't control.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you that I know for a fact that no matter how stressed out I am, how much anxiety I have, that nine, 9 out of the 10 factors that I'm thinking of are just fabricated scenarios that are happening in my mind because of that stress. And when it comes to pressure, every single thing that I'm feeling pressure from, my 100 mile or my business, somebody relying on me, those are all factors that I can control with the choices that I make.
Yeah, yeah. And just to like even think about, because I don't know, for myself, I always think about the human body and the way it moves in analogies, sort of. And I think about like when you think about joints and putting pressure on your joints, it's like that sounds like to me like a controlled movement where like you're doing like a squat or maybe even like a run or something where you're putting pressure on your joints. Whereas like bending your knee backwards is like putting stress on your joints. Like it's like complete in unnatural movement that you cannot control, that you don't want to be in. Like it's like I don't know where I'm going with that. Maybe that's just my brain wandering for a little bit, but I don't know, man. What like is that something that you've thought about before?
I think so.
Is
Yeah,
that
I think
described
that
in the is that described in the book Relentless?
I can't remember if they used the pressure the joints thing, but I do know that like pressure was described as some sort of an internal force in Relentless in relation to like Jordan and Kobe and Dwayne Wade and um I do see like a common factor in like the way we're both describing it though. Like you mentioned like pressure being like a controlled force. So it all comes, I think the difference all comes down to like the factors that you can control and how much force you're applying, is what I feel like is the kind of the takeaway here.
Yeah, because it's I don't know. I think that the easily understandable way for me to like to understand the concept best is to think about like the difference between like beating the hell out of your body doing something like that is stupid and beating the hell out of your body by just doing like a hard workout. Like they're both you're gonna be sore either way, but one of them is like, oh, my muscles are really sore, and the other one's like, I don't know if I'm supposed to move right now or if I should just stay still because my joints are fucked.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think there's an intentionality there. Even with like running, like there's a difference between one thing I've learned with running is there's a difference between hammering down and to each their own, right? But for me, like there's a difference between hammering down like a shit ton of like miles a week without having a end game. Like, what are you training for? What are you doing? Versus like, I need to do this speed workout today. I need to do this long run today. I need to do this hills workout today. I need to do a couple of like 2 hour runs, but they need to be in like that aerobic zone so I can build my aerobic base. There's an intention behind every mile and what I'm doing. Same thing with workouts too. Like I need to do this 30-minute core workout today because I got to build a stronger core. I got to like work those like small muscles in my feet. I got to like do this overhead press so that I can have a stronger swing in my arms so I can take more pressure off my legs and have a more stable core as I get deeper into a race. But there's like I feel like that pressure comes with intent and stress just feels like it can be a raging wildfire if you let it rage out of control.
That's so funny, man. I have a good buddy of mine that is very like I worked out with him last week and we were talking about how we structure our workouts and he's very like he's a kinesiologist and so every single workout that he does is like a movement based on and like intent on exactly like what you're saying. And he's like, "How about you, man?" And I'm like, "Oh, dude, like I don't have a gym membership anymore. I just have weights in my kitchen living room area and like I just do workouts while I cook and while I clean like I literally just move all day. Like I don't there's no like rhyme or reason. It's so funny because even describing like the way that you're like, I have two types of runs. When I go for a run, it's either like I'm pissed off and I need to just process something and it'll last like maybe 10K, like 10 to 15K.
Yeah.
And then um there's times the only other time that I really run is like if I'm gonna be like I'm trying to get conditioning down for jujitsu or something like that. And like those times I just basically do like Tabata style, like I'm trying to gas myself as fast as possible. Like there's like that's the only time I guess I really train with intent. Other than that, it's like really honestly, I'd say like I the way that I train is like what do they say? What's that word? It starts with an I, but it's not like with intent, but it's like I go based off of feel. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like I can't
Instinct,
think of instinct or there's another
intuition.
word, intuition, intuitive. Yeah, intuitive training. And like the reason I say that is because like some days I wake up like today and like I'm a little bit sore, my back feels a little off, my neck feels a little off, and it's like I'm just gonna do some biking, some push-ups, some sit-ups, like a little bit of shoulder stuff, and then do some stretching, like some yoga for a bit. And then there's other days where I wake up and I'm like, dude, I'm gonna blast myself with like a half marathon and then like a bunch of push-ups. Like there's no rhyme or reason. I just sometimes wake up and I'm like, today's a day where I'm gonna blast myself. But I think that it's only gotten to this point because I just work out every day no matter what. So it's just like, what kind of workout are we doing today?
Yeah. Yeah, what kind of thing are you doing today to get better and stay consistent? And for me, that carries over to not just working out, but it also carries over to recovery because for what I did today, like, and I totally like backtracking here, I totally agree about like intuition. I think that what we're saying and what we do, like intent and intuition go hand in hand. I think that you have to be intentional with your workouts, but like what you're doing, you also have to be intuitive and listening to your body and knowing that like you can't just have a rigorous, hard like training plan. Like you have to know like this is feeling extra sore and needs more rest. I slept 2 hours last night and I need to cut this back and do something else. Today was a business heavy day because let's be honest, balance is bullshit. Today
Yeah,
was a
yeah.
business heavy day, and so I need to cut back the workout and make tomorrow more of a training heavy day. Uh, and yeah, I think that intuition is just I just started running in circles there with my thoughts, but I do think that like intuition is a really important thing to have. And so I agree with kind of like it really makes sense what you're doing with like knowing what you have to do and oh yeah, yeah. Consistency, like what can you do? For me, that carries over into recovery. Because I think that like, hey, if I do a workout and I feel a niggle in my foot, that doesn't mean I go and lay in bed, right? It means what am I going to do to do the proper treatment in my foot? What workout am I going to do for foot mobility? What stretches am I going to do? What am I going to do to get myself back out there? What am I going to eat in the kitchen? Like something with protein, obviously, something with high nutrients. I think how am I going to be intentional about my sleep? And I think that a lot of that can be disregarded as a completely separate realm from training, but I think that that's all the wider spectrum of like training and it all involves intuition and intent.
Yeah, I think as well, like it's definitely it's tied as well, like you said, to intent so much because the like what you're trying to get out of your exercise and your workouts and all of those things is so different. And like I'm not obviously saying like better or worse, or I think like what you do is a lot more impressive than what I do. And I think that that's why it's a lot more demanding in regards to like what it demands from you in terms of planning, like where like I don't have to plan as much because what I'm looking for me, like my exercise is just like I just want to feel good. I want my body to move well. I want to feel good when I move. Like I don't want my back to hurt. Like I see other guys in the industry that I'm in and they're like 10, 15 years older than me and they're complaining about like having to get shoulders replaced, knees replaced, backs like everything's all jacked up. And I'm like, that's like my nightmare. I do not want to do that. Like, I want to be jacked at 60 years old, picking kids up and wrestling with young kids and having dogs. And, like that's so for me, like, I'm like, I just want to feel good. I want to be strong and stable. And like, that's so different than being like, I want to run a business and also 100 miles. Like, like that's so crazy to demand that from your body. So obviously, you have to be so much more intent, like with you have to have a lot more intent with like your recovery in terms of like for me, if I'm sore, I'm like, I don't know, I'll just do like the same 15 stretches I know how to do, and I'll do them in my living room, listen to some 90s hip hop and chill out on Saturday morning. Like,
Mhm.
like that could be it. Like, because I don't my routine doesn't demand 300 miles to be run.
Yeah, it's well, I wouldn't like the stuff that you're doing is out of the realm of what I'm doing, like jujitsu and like lifting and all of that. So like I think we're all good in our own ways and can't sell ourselves short in that regard. And um, I do think that like that's a good point you made there about like what you're trying to get out of the workout. People might people might argue like physically like doing a Tabata type of run or like making every run hard is like wrong and this and that, or they might say what I'm doing is wrong, but it all comes down to what you're trying to get out of it. For me, like I am a professional athlete. So what I am trying to get out of it working with the coach is I'm trying to get like gains. I'm trying to get aerobic gains and speed gains and training for these 200-mile races and preparing my body for them. So there's a goal for where I want to get that my coach is working me towards. For you, it's something that makes you mentally feel better, makes you spiritually feel better. It is something that complements your jujitsu, which is your primary thing, lifting, which is more of your primary thing. And so I think that what you're trying to get out of it really matters too. It's the same thing with like the distances, right? Like a lot of people will say, come to me and say like, you do 300, I just do a 5K. And I'm like, there's no just in anything because it's all relative and it depends on your goal. And, um, like you can do even your goals for a specific distance might be different. Like there's somebody who might be going out there like I was 8 years ago, or sorry, 6 years ago, and trying to do their first 5K and just finish. And then there's people out there like who are doing 5Ks in like 17 minutes, 18 minutes, just like flooring it like at an intense pace. And that's hard, man. I would rather go out and do 100 miles. My coach had me do like a 10-mile workout and had me do a 5K at the end of it that was all out. And I was just like, I set a new PR and everything, but it kicked my butt. And I was like, now I know why I love doing long, dull, achy 100-mile stuff, but like it all matters.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's like it's so different how like you could be so good at one thing and then be like, "Oh, this I'm good at a thing." And then there's different ways to do it and you're like, "I'm not good at this thing." Like I actually it's funny because I jokingly like naively thought that I had like a really large gas tank in terms of like jujitsu. Like when I first started, I was like, oh, I'm like super fit, like I'll be good to go. And it's like surprising how um once you get distracted, I guess from your breathing and thinking about how you breathe, it's 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 astonishing how quickly like you gas out, you lose your breath, and you're just like you feel like you're gonna pass out or throw up. Like it's just like I don't know what to do. Like you get like and I'm sure it's probably the same with you. Like when you're doing something endurance wise, like focusing on your breath is like paramount, you know, like that's the only thing you can do.
Yeah, I mean, you have to focus on your breath, and I think you just have to focus on like just like the movement and being in front of you because so many thoughts can go through your head in that moment. So many you're feeling so many pains. You might start doing the math of like how fast do I need to move and this and that, and you really just have to like find ways to stay in the moment. And for me, it's like it's all about like getting back to the roots of like breathing in and out, knowing what you need in that moment. Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Uh, like, are you cold? Are you hot? And just like feeling your body out and just being in tune with your body. And that's one of my favorite things. And just like enjoying that journey. Like, there are moments when I'm in that race or I was in the 300. There are times I cried, but there were also times where I was like smiling ear to ear because I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this thing. Like, I can't believe I
Yeah.
get to do this thing. And there's a big difference between like having and getting to do it, right? And like just reminding myself that I get to do this thing. And yeah, just I think breath is really the thing that like grounds you into these moments. Breath and like just existing and just being, because in this day and age with like our social media, with our phones and everything, we are just constantly like on the move, moving, like even before bed, like if you're on your phone, like your brain doesn't really shut off. And you just have like, and to have something like running in this modern day and age, like ultra running, where you can just like shut your mind off, or you can just like focus on the moment and just like exist and be something on this like rock in the universe or whatever, and just be, is like it's a powerful thing, man.
Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is as well when you think about obviously like ultras and endurance sports like that have increased in popularity, but like you're still a part of like a 1% group, you know, like there's a very select few. I think of myself as kind of like um crazy, and I think that like you're crazier in that regard. Like I'm like you're the crazy amongst the crazy people. Like that's the way I think about it. You know, like yeah. It's and I'm not saying like crazy like in a bad way, but like it's a special type of person that will put themselves through 100 miles on a weekend and then show up like to their job the next day and just be like, yeah, yeah, I just ran 100 miles yesterday. Like, you know, like people are shocked even like I don't know like if you've thought about this, I'm not just trying to like blow smoke, but like people are shocked when like I tell them like, oh, I ran like a half marathon the other day. And they're like, whoa, really? Like it sounds like crazy, like to the average person. And I'm like, dude, you have no idea. Like that's nothing. Like you have
Yeah.
no idea. Like there's people that run like 100 miles, 300 miles on a weekend and just like it's whatever. Like obviously it's not like whatever, but like to just do that is like why are we not celebrating this as like an extreme human feat and we're just treating this like it's a weekend? Like what? You know? It's so that's a special person, man. Like it's crazy to say like to think that that's you, man. Like that's you.
Man, I appreciate that. For me, I view it as a part of like who I am and what I do. And you're right. Like it's crazy to me that like, and I have this I can go on this conversation for hours, but like people will peddle you like alcohol and like substances and everything and be totally fine with that and say like casually say like I need a drink, man. And like full disclaimer, let me backtrack here. Like you don't have to bash on one to respect the other. So I'm not bashing on anybody who's drinking. Like we can all
I
go
could
out
do that.
like we can go out and get drinks and stuff and like like you live your truth, right? But like it cracks me up that there's a group of people who will peddle you a drink and casually like it's the programming's there to say I need a beer, I need a drink, but it's weird and off-putting to them when you say I need a workout or I need to go for a run or I need to do this. And I knew a select group of people who would like party in Vegas on a whim, spend a ton of money, but will look at you weird for running for multiple days at a time. And I just don't like, it's just weird. It's just one of the wildest things to me, man. And I think that a lot of it, and I used to be a part of that too. I mean, I used to drink and everything, and I was a part of that matrix for a while. And I think you have to have that shock and like break yourself out of it to realize. And I've seen like, I've broken out of it. I've talked to people. I've surrounded myself with the right people. So like, I see the outside of the bubble now. So that's why I'm able to talk this way. But I'm just telling you, man, like, how does that come off to you? And have you noticed that in your life when you're like, I can't particularly drink or I can't do this because I gotta go do a workout and you get like elicit like a weird reaction for it.
Oh, dude, there's been so many. It's so crazy too because yeah, I've been at both ends of the spectrum for sure. And I made the transition mentally before I made the transition like physically. And what I mean by that is like I was partying all the fucking time, man. Like I worked in a gym and thought of myself as like a healthy person, but I was still like doing drugs, smoking cigarettes, drinking, partying. But because I lifted every single day, I was like, oh, I'm fit. I'm good. I'm good to go. I'm jacked. I have abs. Like, what's the issue? And then I remember I had quit the job at the gym and I started working in a restaurant and I had started to make this shift mentally of like, I need to fix my life. I start getting up earlier. I start running. I quit smoking cigarettes, but I'm still like every maybe like other weekend or every like third weekend, I'm going out, I'm getting blasted, I'm partying, looking for external validation from other people. And I remember like there was a point where I was like, I need to do I was like I tried 75 hard for the first time. And so I remember I was working in a restaurant, like in a bar, and we would be there and drink all night. Like it was like one of those things like you get off work and you just stay at work and drink, like or you go to the next bar or whatever, right? Like and I remember like while I was there, I started 75 hard. So I'm doing like two workouts a day. I'm like sticking to my meal plan and then, the kitchen messes up and someone's like, "Oh, we have this free meal. Like, do you want it?" And I'm like, "I'm not eating burgers and fries anymore. Like I don't eat that shit. Like I'm just like I need to cleanse myself of it." And I remember even like how many conversations I've had, especially surrounding meals which is interesting because I think that that's one of the biggest areas of improvement that I have. Like my eating is like definitely one of my worst habits is being able to stick to a meal plan. And so when I do 75 hard, that's like the biggest benefit of it. And I remember like there's been so many times where I've had the conversation of people being like, it's just like one treat. Like, why can't you just have like a little bit of sugar? Why can't you just have like a little bit of this? And I'm like, I don't know why, but like my brain doesn't have like an off switch after. Like anything I do to the extreme. And like trying to explain this to people, like it's like you sound like a drug addict because it is kind of like a drug addict's mind. And it's like if you apply it in the right ways, people are just like if you apply it in the most like socially acceptable ways, people will just pass it off. Like you said, like when people are like, "Oh, I need a drink." It's
Yeah.
like that's acceptable. It's like, "Oh, I need a coffee." That's acceptable. Oh, like, you know, I need to hit something. Less acceptable, but still like we're okay. Yeah, if you hit a bag like a punching bag or something. And then there's like, it like varies, but like once you break out of the social norm, for like someone like me, where I'm like, I want to just go and roll around with sweaty dudes and choke each other. Like that's what I want to do. And for you, it's like I want to go and run 100 miles, and my feet and my nipples will probably bleed. And then people are like, you guys are the weird ones, and we're like, okay, like because it's just not something that someone else does. You know what I
I'm
mean?
not crazy, man. I'm just not you. It's just
Yeah, yeah,
it it's man, I feel you on that. Like it's hard to explain to people what it means to have an addictive personality, like to just take things to the extreme and not be able to moderate on things, like running, take it to the extreme, adventure, take it to the extreme, like every single business, take it to the extreme. Like I'm thinking about
yeah.
like I'm not just thinking about like, yeah, I'm thinking about 1% better every day and like consistency and all of that, but I'm not thinking about like staying right where I am. I'm always thinking, all right, what's the next thing? Like, how can we do more? Like, how can we do more? And how can we take this to the extreme?
Yeah. For me, I feel like a lot of the time it's how can I make myself so focused that I can't focus on some of the things that bother me in my own head. That's what it comes down to a lot of the time for me. Because anytime that I've found myself like getting into that kind of either addictive behavior or addictive personality, like wanting to party is the same feeling as like wanting to bury myself in work. Like giving myself a deadline so that like I have to work more hours type of thing. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I have to finish all this stuff. And it's like, do you really? Like, will the world end? But it's like, no, because you create like for me, I say you, but it's me. I create these like scenarios in my head where it's like I have to be busier now because if I'm doing things, then I can't be thinking about other things.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Like, I noticed that I try to stay focused on tasks when I'm feeling extra stressed or nervous. And when I see things piling up, for me, it's about starting to handle the things one at a time and like just like take care of the stuff that's in front of me. And like, I think staying busy is beneficial in the way that you can get things done and get them off your plate. But when you do have like issues to resolve and things to resolve, I think you definitely have to like, for me personally, like I realized that I had to like, I couldn't bury them anymore and I had to like start taking a deeper look at those issues. And for the longest time, I used to think running was honestly the way I was not running towards anything. I was running away from my past. Uh, and I've started to find more and more of a balance in that in running. And now it's kind of about like finding that balance and that equilibrium in all the aspects of my life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy how even outside of like that kind of stuff when I'm like, okay, maybe I should revisit these thoughts and maybe I should take a look into them. I always think about, oh, well, I do my best thinking either in the shower or while I'm working out. Like it's always like an endless cycle that brings me back to like, oh, well, I should just go work out, like no matter how I feel. And like between like that and journaling and podcasting are like the only times that I really do reflect. And yeah, it's such a weird thing, man. It's such a weird thing. It's crazy how our whole society is just trying to escape like feeling and thinking about the painful hurt things. And we just kind of like socially reward people that we like the way that they escape from their pain. And then we condemn people because we don't like the way that they escape from the pain. And it's like everyone's just trying to escape this thing. It's like because some guy does it by burying himself in business and becomes a millionaire. We love him. Or some one guy does it by chasing drugs. We hate him. Like we don't like him. We don't want his tent near our front yard. Like that's for sure. But it's like, we're all like kind of just trying to it's such a weird I don't know, it's just a thought that I just had.
Yeah, that's definitely a big one. And I think it points to the fact that like people are so focused on the end result and the achievement. I think it comes down to like you see it everywhere, right? Like you go on social media and it's like 3 hacks to become a millionaire by the time you're 40, or like uh one
I
thing
like
that you
those.
have to
I like
do,
those. That's good.
one thing that you have to do to like ensure that like you have six-pack abs or whatever like that, right? And it's just everybody wants the hack, everybody wants the immediate result, everybody wants that instant dopamine hit. And nobody wants to pay attention to the process. And in this case, the process for everybody, whether you are drowning yourself in alcohol destructively or whether you are working out, and honestly, like both of those things can be destructive. Running was destructive for me for a long time. Alcohol can be destructive for you. Both those things can be destructive if you let them rage out of control. But the point is like people are just so focused on the end result that they forget the why and the process for why people are doing things to begin with. And you can have like 10 people who are all doing different things, whether they're drinking alcohol, whether they're running, whether they're working out, whether they're like deep in like marijuana, um, whatever it is they're doing, whether they're deep in their business. You can look at all like 10 of those people, and their reasons might be like I'm just trying to escape the pain from my childhood. I'm just trying to escape the pain from my breakup. I'm trying to escape the pain from uh like just I can't handle my mental health and I need to keep myself busy. All those people can have the same reasons, and they're just their brain is just coping in a different way. And so it's an amazing thought, man, that like because we're so focused on the end result. And of course, like there's other factors, right? Like there's morals and ethics. Like you can be to yourself and you can be drinking and like you do you, right? But if it's hurting somebody else, that's another thing. Similarly, like you could be running and it's totally fine. But if you're running and your business or whatever is getting to the point where you're neglecting the other people in your life, that's another thing, right? But the fact that we reward some and like bash on others is just the wildest thought to me when they're all the reasons and motives might be the same.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And there's like these like it's interesting to look at why we give certain people a charitable view. Because there's certain times where it's like, okay, this guy ignored his family to create his business, and then, oh, because he was successful at it and maybe can treat his kids and give his kids like a better future. Like, like there's like some people we look at with like such a charitable light or such a charitable lens. And then there's other times where we look at it and it's like, yeah, that guy's a piece of shit. Like he can't buy his kids' love. Like, and it's like could be the exact same story, but we look at the two people in different lenses. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And how much of that is just like the person who's making that opinion? How much of that do you think is just like a projection of their own like worldview and a projection of their own reflection? Because I do think that like people can look at our stories and what we're doing and have completely different opinions and thoughts on it. Not every single person is going to look at Aum Gandhi and think, a 300-mile badass, or like he does 100 miles all the time and this and that. Other people have looked at me and they're like, what are you running from? Why are you so crazy? Like why are you beating your body up that way? Like everybody's going to have an opinion based on their own reflections and their projections, and it might be the exact same story. So how much of it do you think is just like their internal reflections or their mirror kind of them seeing their own insecurities in you or something of that sort?
Dude, I think that's 100% it. Like, I don't think that there's any other factor. I think that that's like literally it. The only time we judge people is because we see something in ourselves that we hate, and then we project that onto ourselves because we're so unaware when it comes to ourselves. Everyone likes to think that we're self-aware, and we're not at all. We're so unaware that, like, I think our brains have tricked us to notice things that we need to improve in other people because there's no way we would ever notice it in ourselves.
Let me ask you this.
So so it's like almost like anytime you get annoyed with somebody or pissed off with somebody, it's like a reminder of like, oh, that's also how I am.
Yeah, yeah, that actually is a great point that you hit because it leads me to my next question. I've asked myself this a handful of times. I mean, especially when I think it's normal and it's inevitable that you will hurt the people around you that you love, because you have like things that you're dealing with. You will hurt other people because like of behaviors that crop up from the past because of like things that you're trying to work through. And so one of the things I've asked myself is, does that make me a bad person? And then I ask myself, like, okay, well, and I'll ask this to you, what is the difference between like a quote unquote, a morally good person and somebody who is a bad and irredeemable person? And the only thoughts that have come to mind on it so far are that one is not one thinks that they're in the right and they keep doing what they're doing, and the other, despite maybe doing it more than once or continue or like struggling with it, has a self-awareness that these are things that they need to deal with. And so for me, I think the difference is self-awareness. What do you think it is for you?
Um, I don't know, man. I think that self-awareness is a very fleeting thing. I think that it's very easy to be self-aware for like 5 minutes, maybe. Like it's very easy to, for me, if you ask me after I meditate and journal and like I have some fucking Japanese Zen music going on in the background, then yeah, I'm pretty self-aware. But if you ask me when like my girlfriend says something that pisses me off and have like the dialogue of like four things I can choose from to say, none of those things is something of somebody that's self-aware. Like there's very few reactions that I have at that time that I'd be self-aware. I think like I think we're broken, man. I think we're all born like kind of a little bit like kind of flawed and broken. And I don't think that I think that that is what being a human being is. We're not robots, we're not gods, we're not anything other than human beings, and we're flawed and we're broken. And I think that um someone can look at themselves and think, I'm broken, so I've always been broken, I'll always be broken, and that's just how I am and how I'll always be, and there's no sense trying to fix it, and so I'll just let my wounds bleed on everybody around me and the world around me, and it's fucked, and it is what it is. You hear people say that shit all the time. Like that's, dude, when I say it is what it is, I know that I'm in a bad place mentally. But the other side of it is you could look at it and say, I'm broken and I'm flawed, but maybe I could be a little bit less broken and a little bit less flawed.
Yeah.
And if I'm a little bit wounded right now, like maybe I could rest up and clean this and dress this wound up so I'm not bleeding onto other people. Like I think that that's the difference between like what you said was like morally good or morally bad. is like the two differences would be like the intention of trying to improve and trying to notice these things and and to help others get to that outcome as well. Because I
Yeah.
think that that's the other thing is like we see other people that are hurting and suffering and they have reactions that we don't like. And our first reaction is like, I want to condemn this person and I want them to suffer so that they know that what they're doing is wrong. Because I know they're hurting and I know that this is like a result of unmet needs, but the way that they're reacting to it is not up to my standard. And so they need to know that what they're doing is bad. And so we like try and tell them and reprimand them when really like it's like how often do we look at somebody who's having a temper tantrum with love and with like, what are your unmet needs? Like, what are your issues? Like, that's the difference between morally good and morally wrong is like seeing somebody that's lashing out that might be hurting you or other people around them and being like, dude, I want you to heal, man. Like, I'm praying for you. I love you. Like, that's the difference. Rather than like, you need to stop or I'll hurt you, you know?
If we keep doing that, then nobody's gonna get better. Like we're
Right.
all just gonna destroy each other.
Right.
And
But how many
and
times do you see somebody that lashes out and you're like, I need to tell this person being a fucking idiot? I know that's my first response every time.
yeah, I think that's the natural flight or fight response of a human being is just like you see something that you might think might be threatening in some way, and I think that it's a natural response for us. But we're also so much more than that. We're so complex as human beings compared to other animals, and I do think that like there's you're right. Like I think that eventually you do have to look at that other side of it and wonder like what is bugging this person? Like why are you acting this way? Like and I think that we're so like reactive more than being proactive and understanding like what issues a person's going through. Like even if we can't help that person, how can we help the next person? How can we prevent these issues in the future instead of like just shutting these people down when things get bad? And just granted, there are like things that are morally just like objectively morally wrong, like you hurt a kid or like you hurt a dog or something like that, or like there are
Yeah,
certain
yeah,
things that are just like morally irredeemable and it's just like fuck you, man. But
yeah.
like a guy is just like a guy lashes out, or like let's say there's a guy who's just like been he's a pretty good dude, and then like all of a sudden he lashes out or he has a bad moment or something like that, and like wouldn't your first instinct be like, man, like I've never seen Bill act that way. Like, what the hell is wrong with him? Like, what is going on in his mind, right? As opposed to like, screw you, dude.
Yeah, or like think about even when it's like a random person, like when like you're in like say like a Starbucks and
Yeah,
there's like a guy who's like, I don't know, you don't know nothing about him and he's like screaming at like a prepubescent or whatever, like some fucking like 17-year-old kid who's working at the counter who gave him
yeah,
like a wrong coffee. And you're like, dude, you're yelling at a child. Like my
yeah,
first instinct is to tell that person like, yo, shut the fuck up, man. Like, why are you yelling at a child? You
yeah,
know, but then you think about like what you said is like, how disturbed is your mind that you have to yell at a child over like the wrong coffee order or whatever, you know, like something's
yeah.
obviously going on.
And my problem is that I think about that a lot because it's just like your first instinct, of course, is like, man, stop yelling at somebody in the service industry. You know, that's not a cool thing to do. Like that person's just trying to help. They're trying to do their job. But then you look at the other side of it and you're like, you don't know what that guy's going through either. Like, what if he just found out that somebody in his family is like struggling with a disease? Or like, what if he found out that um, I mean, all of these are assumptions and he could just totally be an asshole, but like,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
what if he just found out like, somebody close to him died? What if he just found out he got fired from his job? Like there are a lot of plausible reasons, and I think that the way we react is not just our fight or flight reaction, it's the basis of assumption as well. It's just assuming that, oh, that guy's yelling, he just must be a jerk. Uh, and I think it also comes down to like with people and strangers, right? Like your first impression is your last impression. Like
Hmm.
it seems like there's this innate behavior biologically that you're making assumptions about a person, your first assumptions about a person within like within the first few minutes of knowing them. In this case, the first few seconds. Um, I don't know that I would react fast enough. Like I always tell myself I would. Everybody tells themselves they would react by doing this, this, and this. Everybody can do that in hindsight, okay? Like, but I would want my ideal reaction to be to get in between them and resolve both of their issues. And just like, dude, like what's bugging you? Like, I'll buy your coffee or whatever, like whatever, right? And like whether that works or not, I don't know, but that's what I want to do morally. But again, we all say that in hindsight and we all react differently and we're not perfect. Like even the most perfect humanitarian guy is going to drop the ball and make a mistake. He's not going to be able to help every single human being. I'm not going to be able to help every single car that's stopped and like push it off the road. Like you're not going to be able to help all the time or react fast enough to help everybody in time. That's just not how it works. But like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, how would you react in that situation if you saw like the man yelling at the barista?
I don't know, man. I don't know because I think there's like this fine line because, and I feel divided because I do love people and I want to be a better person, a more patient and a more compassionate person. But I also have this side of me that just feels like, you also do have to correct those things. Like there has to be some repercussion to acting out. And I think that if you are of sound mind and a grown man, like you kind of have to understand at some point there is going to be repercussions for your
Yeah.
actions. Like you
Yep.
can't just go around yelling and screaming at people and saying whatever you like you can, but there definitely will be repercussions, right? Like it's so I don't know. I'm kind of divided on that because I know that my my super ego would like to say like I'm like a card carrying mindful stoic hero that could just
Yep, me
diffuse the
too.
situation. But I know that my gut initial reaction would be kind of like I had initially said, which it's like kind of um I think personally, like the way I deal with situations like that is I try and deal with it with humor. And then from there it just kind of that's the way I deal with things like that. Like I'll maybe piss someone off because I'll just make fun of things like that. Like I would be like, hey, remember that time you yelled at a 17-year-old woman for fucking making your drink wrong at a fucking Starbucks? Like I would just make fun of them to the point where like everyone would have to laugh. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that's just my natural without like being too mad. That would be if I was having a bad day, I would probably verbally say a little bit more.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And I do think that more people have to be able to look at the stuff that they've done and be able to laugh at it. And I do think that you got to be able to have a sense of humor and like talk shit to yourself and have a little jibe with others. And I mean, just I think I would definitely kind of like, I don't know that I'd be the person to like push buttons like that, but I definitely love to like poke fun at myself about stuff that I've done and mistakes that I've made and stuff like that. And just, not take myself like, there's plenty of time to take yourself seriously, right? Like I work hard when I work on my business. I work hard when I'm doing these 100-mile races, but the rest of the time, like I love like fucking around and like not taking myself too seriously because it's life, dude. You don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. You don't know what's gonna happen in a week. You don't know what's gonna happen in 5 minutes. Like a meteor could come crashing into my house and I could die on the spot, right? Um, I mean, implausible probably, but like, like
I'm looking out my window right now.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. And like, you randomly like see these stories about like a completely healthy 25-year-old like having cardiac arrest or whatever. It could happen to me tomorrow. Like there's no guarantees in this life. And so you got to be able to poke fun of yourself and like that and um be a clown a little bit, and like when it's time to get serious, then you get serious. Because like if you're serious all the time, you're gonna break. If you're joking all the time, you're also gonna break. I think you have to find like a balance between all of those.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think and it's so hard to balance between that too, because that's like I'd say like a big part of my personality as well is like kind of bouncing between the two. Like there's definitely like a very serious mark, and then there's also like a side of me where like I it seems like I take nothing serious. So I don't know what and I don't even know what starts either one, but I don't know. Yeah, it's so funny because if you were to like try and joke around with me while I'm trying to figure something out at work, I'd be like, bro, get the fuck out of here. Like I'm trying to do this right now. Like this
Yep.
is serious. Like, and then there's other times where like even it's not even always like at work. Like there's other times at work where I'm just joking around, having fun, like joking with customers, joking with the people I work with, where it's like whatever. Like it's like so laissez-faire and it's like yeah, I don't know. I guess that's kind of the duality of like I said, being human. There's like all these different sides of nobody's all the time. Nobody's one thing all the time.
Yeah, that's a good point. Nobody's one thing all the time, and we can't uh we can't be all the things to we can't be all the things to everyone, and we can't be like there's going to be like kind of a balancing meter and a fallout in some places, and I think that's just the part of being human, right? Like you can't always be perfect at your business. You can't always be like great at like working out. Like there are going to be inevitably times where you're not a good partner. There's inevitably going to be times where you're not a good son or a family member or a friend. And I think that it's all these like switches and stuff that we just have to like try to dial in and out because it's both a gift and a curse, right? I think that a human being's greatest strength is being multifaceted and being able to handle all those things. But there are going to be times where like you have to like every single day is just a battle of like flipping those dials and knowing where you have to, what you have to prioritize, where you have to be, what you have to do. And in the mix of all of that, like trying to like keep enough in the tank for like where that energy is coming from, like trying to keep the main energy system at charge, and that energy system being like you and who you are and like your own tank, which is kind of what we talked about when we started this chat, right? Is like recharging that tank so that you can dial those switches when the time comes, because that's important too. So let me ask you this, like, how do you, with all the multifacets that you have, like you are you're Mark, like you are a business owner, like you're working in a business, like you are in jujitsu, you work out, you run, you are a podcaster, you're a partner. Uh, like how do you balance all these things and these switches and still find a way to make that time to recharge the energy for yourself?
I don't. I usually just crash and burn, and then there's like it's forced upon me. And
It's the realest
I
answer ever, dude. I hear you, brother.
I I honestly, that's the best thing I could say. I don't know. For me, like the only time I would say that I regularly have that I focus on myself and recharging mentally is my mornings. If I'm not waking up early, my life is a mess because when I wake up early is the only time that I have to just like have quiet time and I do a little bit of movement, I do a little bit of reading, and I do a little bit of journaling. And when I do those things early enough in the day, I feel like it's almost like putting on clothing. Like I feel weird without doing those things before I get up and do things. Like, does that make sense? Like it seems more natural to do those things, if I'm being honest, than to brush my teeth. Like I have to think more about that than I do waking up and like jumping on my exercise bike for 25 minutes, doing some push-ups, reading my book and journaling. Like I have to think more about combing my hair, brushing my teeth, and doing those things. I feel weirder if I don't do those things than if I, you know what I mean? Like it's,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's the only time. So like it's also the easiest thing to convince myself not to do because it's like, oh, I could sleep in. Like nobody's, it's not like gonna impact my life as much as if I were to skip a day of work. Like that would impact my bank account. It would impact everything. My partner, like my girlfriend would be like, what the fuck? Like, were you missing work? Like, but if I just slept in and I didn't do my exercise in the morning and I didn't journal and I didn't read, nobody would bat an eye. Nobody would say anything. You know what I mean? But I would feel off.
Yeah, that's a good point that you make. It's the things that you seem to do for you internally are the ones that seem to go first. Whereas
Yeah, it's
like
the easiest one to compromise on.
easiest one to compromise on. And um there are
Oh, I
other
read every day. I don't need to read today. Oh,
yeah,
I journal
yeah,
every day. Why would I need to journal today? Like, it's not like it's going to make me more money. I have to get out the door. I don't have time for this. There's all these other like things like,
that you almost have to do, or like they're like responsibilities, or they're things that are part of like that pressure spectrum, whereas like this is more part of like that's more like external pressures and these are more like internal pressures. And
mhm.
um they are the first ones to go. It is crazy to me that like self-care is the first thing to go um for a human being. Um but you're right. It really is. Like I noticed that when I start putting others ahead and I start like moving around and trying to like help everybody out, I noticed that I start neglecting my self-care.
Yeah, yeah. I think for myself, after doing a little bit of reflection, I've realized that a lot of it for me personally stems from like abandonment issues. I know that like I'm less likely to go back on my word if I've like socially like somebody has heard me say it or I've like somebody's relying on me to do it because in my head I guess subconsciously, I'm like, if I don't do this, they might not love me. They might not like me. They might not want to spend time around me. They might not rely on me in the future. And I feel like having somebody rely on me is the only thing that keeps them around me because maybe they'll find out that I'm not as good as I think I am. And
Imposter
all
syndrome.
these, yeah, yeah, imposter syndrome. But I've identified it as kind of like an abandonment issue. And I think that like when we look at if we were to go back on our word about anything, it would be something that we've said to ourselves because it's like, I'm not really gonna. I've tried to abandon myself, and this motherfucker won't leave me alone. Like, you know, so that's the only one I could let down because I can't abandon myself. You know, so I just let myself down. I don't want to let others down because they might leave me. That's what I'm trying to say.
That makes sense. And I think that a lot of what I deal with stems from like emotional abuse and abandonment issues as well. And like, I think just like feeling like I'm not good enough.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I think just for me, like a lot of it even carries over into like part of what I do for my business is I handle the social media aspects of it. And I realized that like spending a lot of time on social media has been proportional to being more like anxious because like you just have to, and I realize you have to set boundaries for like how you're getting on social media and all of that. Because I've noticed that the abandonment stuff carries over into like something that's very specific to today's day and age. Like back then, like not everybody had a phone. Like you were sending letters everywhere. You were sending emails if you had the internet and everything like that. So nobody expected instant replies. But now we live in a day and age where like you can message anybody on a whim wherever you want. And so like there's a sense of like texting anxiety almost of like I'll text this and like why aren't they responding? Or they'll text something and there's an anxiety, internal anxiety of like, Man, I've been busy with this. Like, really need to get back to this, but I gotta take care of this first. I can't do that right now, right? Like, and yeah, I think that a lot of it stems from like fear of disappointing others and like, what if they don't like me? And like, for me, that applies like to my loved ones, like my partner, my family, my friends. It doesn't apply to strangers. It used to apply to strangers. I used to be a big people pleaser. Now I'm just like, if you don't like me, fuck off, But like when it comes to like my partner, especially, or like people that I'm really close to, I'm like, I'm always having that fear of like disappointing them. And when I do, like I feel like a big letdown and I feel remorseful for it.
Yeah. I almost have like this it's almost like you have like this idea of your own identity, and there's like the good you, there's the good version of you, and there's like the bad version of you. And when you do something that you feel like lets somebody else down, it's almost like it's reinforcing that. You're like, oh, now they see me as this. And it's like it's your own image of what you see your own bad self, like the bad version of yourself as. And it's like
Yeah.
probably something like they've never thought of before. Excuse me. But like, say, like you, like, I don't know, you fell on hard times. You like can't get a cool gift for your friend for their birthday or whatever. And then you're like, oh, they're gonna think that I'm selfish. Oh, they're gonna think that this, they're gonna think that, they're gonna think that I'm like stupid or that I'm poor or that I'm this or, you know, whatever version of yourself that you see bad in. And then that's just gonna like it could even like not even be a thought in your friend's head, but it's like you're projecting that, like you were saying earlier, because it's your own version of yourself in your head. Like does that, are you following what I'm saying? Am I off? Am
Yeah,
I
yeah, I think that a lot of it is, I think you're right. A lot of it is when you is your own perception, is
yeah,
stuff that's like is in your head because I've noticed that even when I make a mistake, like my partner might have moved on or is already starting to move on, or the person that I hurt is moved on, is already starting to move on. But I'm here sitting in my head feeling remorseful, replaying the moment over and over again. What could I have done better? Like, am I a bad human being? Have I ruined everything? And it just, I think that we get so caught up in like our internal projection that we stop looking outwards. And sometimes for me personally, it gets to a point where like I have to step back and realize like, okay, like there's nothing to be gained by replaying this over and over in my head. There's nothing to be regained from continuing to like feel remorseful. Like I can't just keep being sorry. I just got to be better and I just got to do better. And I have to like figure out the solutions. Like being remorseful and being sorry for yourself isn't going to change anything, right? Like you have to go out and like figure out like what is the next step? What do I got to do? And for me, like with the way things have been building up recently, for me, it was realizing that like I fleshed out a lot of things because of running, and I'm thankful for running because of that. Because drugs and all the drinking I used to do really just like numb me to those emotions. And I realize that now I need the tools and help of a professional to be able to take the next steps in my journey.
yeah, yeah. And that is the biggest, like it's so frustrating, and it's so it's difficult to do because, yeah, you and I have talked about this before, where it's like I hate the idea of going for an external solution for an internal problem. There's
Yep.
something about that, and maybe it's ego and maybe it's pride, but it's also like I feel like I don't know, I kind of have like mixed emotions about it. I think that feels like there should be a way to fix this thing within me. within me. But there's also like this idea of like, well, if you knew the answer, you probably wouldn't be in this situation.
Yeah,
Like that's also the other side of it as well. I don't know, man. I have got, like I said, I've got mixed feelings about it, but it's also something that I'm gonna be pursuing this month. So it's like I'm nervous for it and I'm excited for it, and I think that at the very least, it'll be an opportunity to be proven right, and then at the very most, I'll be proven wrong in a very beautiful way. And so that's kind of the way I'm looking at it at this point.
it's a
Like
great way to look at it. Yeah, that's a good way to
I'll
look at
learn,
it. That you win either way, dude.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, man, I gotta tell you, like, it took me a while to like realize that like I needed that extra help, or I needed those tools. And I really had to get over what was surprisingly like a tinge of shame over it. And just like almost like embarrassment in a way. Um, and I think that a lot of it again was just tied to the projections from the people I've grown up around, projections of like I'd grown up around the idea that like if you go to therapy, you're a lunatic. Um, whereas like I truthfully think that there are a lot of people who need it who never even consider it. And they continue to bleed on others. And granted, it's not like a magic pill or anything like that. I think that there are a lot of people on the opposite end of the spectrum who think that I go to therapy and like I come out and I'm like 100% okay. And I just I said this on a podcast that I did like a couple of weeks ago, and one of my biggest pet peeves is when somebody thinks that when you do the work, you come out the other side and you're like 100% good and you're okay. Like I've done the work. I did my journaling, I did my meditation, all that. To me, doing the work is just like working out in your body or it's working out in your mind. You can't just like run for like X number of weeks and get to the point where you want and then stop once you've hit your goal. Because then you're eventually going to get back to that unhealthy lifestyle. It's working on yourself is a lifestyle because I don't believe for a single minute that you going to counseling or me going to therapy means that like we're never going to have these issues crop up again. Like what to me that is like I just believe that having that external source may give you a different professional perspective, may give you more tools to like work with. It's like journaling, I view as a tool, like exercise, I view as a tool. Like it just gives you more tools in your tool chest so that when you do have to fight that battle again, you have more equipment and you have more armor to be able to deal with those issues in a healthy way.
Yeah, yeah. I um I think that the best analogy that anyone has ever said is like so cliche at this point, but it's worth repeating because it is so great of an analogy, is that it's like rent. It's like rent being due. And like just because you pay the rent this month doesn't mean that you get to stay in wherever you live next month. You have to pay the rent every single fucking time. And not only is it consistently going to be there every single time, but guess what? It also increases every year. Like rent is due and the demand that you're going to have upon you is going to increase.
Yep.
And it's up to you to find out like how you're going to pay that rent. Whether that is like and there's going to be different types of rent. That's the other thing is like could be spiritual rent. It could be, relationship rent. It could be actual financial things that you have to pay for. It could be anything. Like it could be your health rent. And if you don't pay now, it acquires interest or it accrues interest, right?
Yeah.
And I just feel like that's such a beautiful way to say it is because it's like, yeah, when it comes to taking care of your brain, I know my brain is like a ticking time bomb, dude. Like it's like I said, I haven't really adjusted well to this like my own nature of just like having to go either 100% or 0%. and I crash and burn often, but um I think that I can't remember where I was going with that, but I just think that it's for me, if I don't lock down like those precious like little 5% payments every single day of like just journal a little bit. Think about your feelings. Not even understand your feelings, not even understand your emotions, but just think about them and identify them maybe. Like maybe that is like, it's not all the way, but if you could do that every day, it'll at least delay the explosion of what I consider my brain to be, which is like a ticking time bomb. Like it's like I think that sometimes there's seasons in your life where you're gonna have to neglect certain pains emotionally and spiritually because you just in grind season. And I think that there's repercussions for that. And I think that that's what I mean by like the ticking time bomb is because like I think a lot of the time, especially as young men, and when I say young, I mean like under 40, like under 50, there's a lot of times where we just have to stifle our emotions. And it sucks to say. And and I know it's unhealthy. It sounds like it's unhealthy to do, but it's a necessity because
Yep.
like as well as I do that your boss doesn't care that you're not feeling great. Your girl doesn't really want to hear about how you don't feel secure about whatever it is all the time. Your parents don't want to hear you say that. They want to know that they've raised a strong man. Your girl wants to know that she's with a strong man. Your boss
Yep.
wants to know that they hired a strong guy, a good guy. And so there's going to be times where you just have to swallow it. And I'm not saying it's good to do. I'm not saying it's healthy to do. I'm saying that it's necessity sometimes. And
It's
there
the
is
reality.
repercussions to it. Exactly. It is reality, but there's repercussions to it. But there's also things we can do to soften the blow and delay the repercussions. And that's what I think that's what we've been talking about this entire time is like the waking up earlier to journal and to move. Or for you, it's like being intentional with like, I need to disconnect at this time and I need to just have quiet. I need to just relax. I need to recover. Like if I don't, this is going to explode now and it's going to hurt everyone around it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, just knowing that like most of the time you have to be strong, you have to be reliable, you have to like have your armor up, you have to like just I mean, doing that is exhausting, but it is like the reality. And so you just have to find ways to like do the things you can to like delay those inevitables and like to just have like more tools in your chest, like we talked about, and just take care of yourself so that you can take care of others. And like that was really the most interesting thing was that I asked myself why I'm going to therapy. And it wasn't just the first reason, and if not the primary reason, wasn't just for myself. It was because I want to be able to be strong, even stronger for others.
Yeah.
And yeah, like just want to be the strongest version of myself, be a stronger athlete, be a stronger partner, be stronger owner of a business in the long term. And yeah, I just like after that, it was like, yeah, and I also want to do this for myself.
Yeah. I know that there's definitely like, excuse me. I was gonna say, I know for myself, one of the biggest signs was like I'm getting to a point now where not just I'm having, like dark thoughts, but like the reasons why I'm having dark thoughts or the situations where it's like, I was having a good day and then this thing happened that like any other time it would have been okay. But for some reason right now it's bothering me way more and it's putting me in a dark place. And like the dark place is lasting a little bit longer. It's a little darker than it normally is, and it's lasting a little bit longer than it normally should. And that's where I was like, this is a normal occurrence or a normal like event now where it's like not just like a one-off once a month or once every couple months. Like it's like once it's happened like once every week or more than once a week, then it's like, this isn't the way I want to live my life. And then it took a long time for the awareness of like, well, if I knew the answer, then I probably wouldn't be in this situation because I don't want to be in this situation. So obviously, if I knew how to not be in it, then I wouldn't be in it. It's not like I want to be here. So like at this point, there comes a time where, and like I think about this like not just in like a literal way, but also in a spiritual way, when you kind of have to surrender and understand like, I'm not the highest power in this world, and I don't have all the answers. And
Yeah.
not to put another human being on a pedestal and say that they're perfect, but like maybe they know something I don't know, you know? It's not like it's you got to kind of surrender and understand that there's times in your life where you don't hold all the power.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think that it's freeing to know that you don't have all the answers. And honestly, like everybody in life has low-hanging fruit, no matter who you are. Like we all have our baggage, we all have our issues. None of us are easy to be with. Not a single one of us. And it just we all have to like we all have like our things that we deal with, our issues that we deal with. And I think realizing that it's breaking the stigma of realizing that like seeking that external help doesn't make you weak. It's actually a powerful thing because a lot of people don't hit that realization that they need that. Um, and I think that's like I think a good way that I've started to describe it more is like when you work out. When I signed up for running and I wanted to get better at running, I hired a coach. When I wanted to do better with my nutrition, I brought in a dietitian to help me solve my stomach issues at my races. Uh, there are a lot of mental skills coaches. Almost every professional athlete has a mental skills coach. So now I kind of realize, hey, I want to dial in some things with my mind and I want to build a stronger and more resilient mind. I'm bringing in a mind coach, a mindset coach, or a therapist. That's the way I'm starting to see it, is this is all just part of my training.
Yeah, yeah. For me, I think one of the biggest shifts that I recently had was I thought of it, like you said, like as a weakness, is like, um, you know, I don't want to think of myself as somebody that needs counseling or needs therapy. Like, I don't want to, when I think of myself in the future, it's like that's not who I really want to be. And it's not really like something I'm proud of. But then I also like was able to shift my perspective to think of it like, and this is kind of like, again, it is kind of funny and over dramatic and romanticized, but it's like when you think back to like any of the greatest leaders, they all had a council. They all had like people around them that were either impartial or thought differently than them and purposely sought out because they thought differently than them. They want to have like an impartial
Yeah.
like idea of like, hey, I want to say this is what I think, and then to have someone that thinks differently than you or has like an impartial opinion on it can just bounce the idea back off and say like, okay, this is what I'm hearing you say. Have you heard yourself say that before? Because this is what you sound like, which is like it's important. That was one of the biggest things about podcasting for me was like hearing myself say things. Because like when you hear someone say something, you're like, wow, that's absurd. But then when you hear, like, you don't hear yourself say a lot of the things you say. You just say it, and you're like, yeah, I thought that, so it sounded good. So I guess I
Yeah.
sound
Yep.
good. Like but not just to hear back that, but also to hear, like I said, like to hear back from somebody that thinks differently than you do.
Yeah, that
So
makes
I
sense.
think of it as like that's what a counselor is. You're going to your counsel.
You're going to your council. Yeah. I have a running
Like
coach on
it's
my council. I have a dietitian on my council, and I have a therapist on my council, and they all think they have different experiences or they think differently than me on certain things, and that in turn helps me become stronger and more resilient.
right. And like, dude, the thing is as well is like when you're having a problem, if you're anything like me, you probably talk about that problem with most people that you love. Like I'll talk about the problems that I have with people that I work with, because I work with family, so it's like people that when I'm at work, I'll say something, and the blue collar construction workers have one idea, and then I come home and I talk to my girlfriend about it, and she's got a completely different idea than I would have, or than a blue collar worker would have. And I go to jujitsu and I talk to some other dudes, and they're going to have a different thing. And, the more, and then it's not like you have to listen to every single one of them, or you could like to, oh, yeah, I like this guy's advice, or I haven't tried that thing, or, just hearing this person said this. Now I have a different perspective on it. And it's like, there's no weakness in like expressing, like, that's literally what the greatest minds and the greatest leaders of this world have ever done. You know, they have a council. So like it's just a way that I've thought of it recently to just shift that perspective in my head of like, oh, this actually is like a strengthening thing. This is making me cooler. Like that's the way I think about it now, Like
It's badass. Man, man. So I gotta ask you this. Man, I had a question. Man, I had a question. I just lost my train of thought on it.
it's
Uh,
all good. That happens to me all the time. That's actually probably like 60% of my conversations.
but yeah, let me think. It was just so with this in mind, like with having the counseling, with having the journaling and all these components, just to kind of put a wrap on this conversation, like how do you see all of those components working together? Like what you've already got built out in your tool chest, what you're seeking out in counseling. Like how do you see, and your working out and your lifestyle, like how do you see all these components together? And like, do you have an analogy for that? It's a loaded question.
Yeah, I don't know. I think of it like I don't know. I got to think about that one. How do I see them all working together and
And maybe it's an answer that we don't have right away, and maybe it's something to think about for the next conversation. Because
yeah.
you won't really know until that one's hard to know until you actually go to counseling. It's hard for me to know until I actually go to therapy.
Yeah, I mean, I think like it's kind of it's one of those things where I think that we're kind of having to keep a bunch of buckets from leaking 100%. Like it's almost like if you had like a bunch of buckets, right? And they all had water in them, and then someone came by and just like started poking holes in the bottom of every single one of your buckets.
Yep.
And some of the holes are pinholes, and it could take your whole life for that bucket to empty. But some of them, because of like some trauma or some like shaking or whatever happens, the hole gets a lot bigger. And so that bucket's leaking faster than your other buckets. And so I feel like life is kind of just like consistently trying to figure out where the leak is, what the most urgent leak is. And then like all of those things that you were talking about, the self-care, the counseling, the journaling, the workouts, the yoga, the meditation, eating right, sleeping right, having loving relationships. Like every little thing is like that, like shrinks the hole of the bucket. You know what I mean? And then there's other things that you could do that pour more water into the buckets. But the idea is to not let the bucket get empty. So you can race the hole and dump more water into the bucket and try and race like, oh, I can pour water in faster than it'll leak. That's one way to go about it. you know? And then the other way is to like, I want to start to maybe close these holes so that I
Yeah.
don't have to work so hard all the time.
Yeah.
I think that that's kind of like, I think that the people that are waking up 15 minutes before they have to leave for work and eating the 7-Eleven taquitos on the way home and fucking uh telling their partners, oh, not now. I don't want to talk about that right now. Ask me after the work week so I can focus. And they're just pushing and pushing and push. They're racing. They're trying to fill the buckets faster than it'll leak out. And then there's other people that are like just kind of coasting through life. And you're like, why is this guy always relaxed? Like he has more bills than I do, but they just seem to be paid. And it's because he's found a way to like slow the leak. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense to me. Like that's kind of how I'm viewing like that's kind of how I'm viewing like some of the external sources is like I'm going out to get materials to fix the leak. Whereas like the stuff that I have right now, those are practices of like everyday maintenance of like I need to like I need to like try to get the water out before the boat sinks or whatever, like those little
Mhm.
cartoons or whatever. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
and then it gets to a point where like you're exhausted from doing it or like you're not keeping up with the pace of it and you just need like that support to be able to do it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, man.
And yeah, and one thing I've realized with business and entrepreneurship in life is that nobody does it alone. Whether it's we all have a tribe, like whether it's our partners, like whether it's um the group chats that we have, whether it's our friends. Uh, and I do think that nobody should have to be, least of all you and me, nobody should have to be everything for one person or everyone, right? Like it's one thing that I've wrestled with like my partner is like I don't have to be everything for my partner. Like I can be a safe space. I can be like a place of comfort and I can be a person that'll always have their back and they'll know it, right? But I'm not always going to be the person who understands their job. They got friends who understand their job. I'm not going to be the person who's always going to be able to go on trips with them. They got friends who always love to travel, right? I'm not going to be the person who understands this hobby or that hobby. Like they got friends in those hobbies, similar to us. Like we got like there's things that our partner can't understand or fulfill, and we've got friends for that. We've got family for that. Like, and so I think I view it in that sense of like there's nobody in this world who's going to do anything alone. We all have to like collaborate and not compete and just lift each other up.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. I think that, yeah, I agree. There, you don't have to be everything for everybody. And I think that that's such a cool thing to understand. I think that we put a lot of expectations on other people and ourselves. And I think that even like something as simple as like you said, like hobbies or liking the same things or doing the same things, like it's like we have this expectation like, oh, I love fishing. How come my girlfriend doesn't want to sit in silence with me for 4 hours on the water? And like
Yeah.
what, you know, yeah, like it's like we have this expectation of like you should like what I like because you like me and I like you. Like that's the
Yeah.
way that it should be. But it's also like the other side of it is like you could also just like it in different ways because I'm sure that if you were to like maybe spin it in a way of like, hey, do you want to go and sit by the water and just like maybe whisper a couple jokes back and forth and have a sandwich together and listen to the birds and like I'm sure you could spin it in a way it's like yeah you probably won't catch any fish or you probably won't have the same like experience that you have when you go with your dad or your boys or whatever it is but if you change your expectations either around the activity or the person or whatever it is you'll still probably have fun you'll still probably enjoy it like you'll still
Exactly.
probably get something out of it and I don't know. I take all these obscure analogies a little bit too far sometimes, so
No,
that's what.
that's a good point right there. Uh yeah, I mean my girlfriend does not love like sports at all. Like every time I post something about basketball or something of that sort, she'll always just be like, "Yeah, let's go, boys," in like almost like a sarcastic, like
Go
funny way.
sports.
Basketball. Like every time
Yeah.
I'm talking about the Lakers, she'll be like, "Didn't they just play yesterday?" I'm like, "It's an 82 season game. It's an
Yeah.
82 game season. Like they'll play every other day." And I have to remind her, like, I don't have to watch every game, but like sometimes I like to watch him to laid back. And I give her the analogy of like she loves like trash TV, like Love is Blind and The Bachelorette and stuff like that. And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
just like, hey, this is my turn my brain off mindless TV right here, like hoops, right? Like you've got
Yeah.
your turn your brain off mindless TV. And it goes back to what we said about we don't have to like all those things, but that one always cracks me up because she's like, "How are the boys doing?" She has
The
no idea what
boys.
to do, and like, she's like, "Why do you hate the Clippers and the Celtics so much? They're somebody else's boys too." I'm like, "You only
You don't
understand if you're a
understand.
Los Angeles fan."
Yeah, you don't understand. You don't know the difference between it all. Yeah. It's hilarious, man. Those types of that type those types of rivalries and things like that, that's hilarious, man. Oh man. We have that. It's funny because I always think like the thing about the Celtics and the Lakers is it's like kind of world renowned. Like everyone kind of knows about that.
Yeah.
But it's funny to think about some of the sports rivalries. Like I think about like in Vancouver, there's like two teams in
Mhm.
terms of like hockey that we fucking hate in Vancouver. And and I think about the people in those cities probably don't think about us. Such a funny thing to think. You know, one of them actually is Boston as well.
Oh
Vancouver,
shit.
yeah, I don't know if you know this or remember this, if you heard about it at all, but um, like 15 years ago, we almost burnt our city down because the Boston Bruins beat Vancouver Canucks in the playoffs.
Wow.
It's like our
Uh,
closest we've come to winning a Stanley Cup, and we like
well,
almost burnt our city down after the loss.
the
Like
Lakers,
every,
I can tell you how many times the Lakers have won a championship and the city's almost been burnt down because of
yeah,
it. It's just one of the things that cracks me up is I always tell my girlfriend, I'm like, one of the analogies I give her is like how you talk about spinning it. I'm like, you know how Love is Blind and these reality shows have storylines? Well, see, basketball has storylines too. This
oh
guy
yeah,
and this guy don't like each other. Like this guy and this owner don't like each other. Like
yeah.
Joel Embiid doesn't like Karl Anthony Towns. They go at each other. Like, um, and it's just funny that she doesn't get it, but it cracks me up, like the analogy of it and all of that. I'm like, so it's like WWE, like wrestling, there's like storylines and stuff.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but it's funny to me that like one thing I'm really self-aware of is that like sports fans can be really passionate about their players and everything like that. And then they realize that these millionaire basketball players don't have any idea who they are. And yet,
And
yeah,
also probably don't like them. Like that's the other
yeah,
thing as well. I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but like this is something that I've thought about, and it is maybe a projection of the way that I think, and this is kind of maybe a very sinister way to look at it. But I think the type of person that becomes a LeBron James isn't gonna really like get along with or enjoy the average, basketball. I'm not saying like because I actually love basketball as well. So like I would consider myself to be a basketball fan. I know like you are, and probably like actually I don't think that maybe even I don't think I'd really even really be able to relate. Like, you know what I mean? Like the type of person that becomes the best of the best of the best doesn't necessarily get along with your average person. They just don't
no,
have the same values. They don't have the same thought patterns, the same behaviors. I don't see a conversation going well. You know what
no,
I mean? And so for people like the average person who idolizes these people, it's like if you were to talk with this person alone in a room, you would not leave the room very happy.
no. It's never meet your heroes, man. Never meet
Yeah,
your heroes.
yeah,
Uh
yeah. Maybe
yeah.
that's why they say that.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I'm sure that's why they say that. Yeah, you guys have some good guys though. I'm a big Scotty Barnes fan, so good big Scotty Barnes and um I do like how RJ Barrett's been doing for you guys when in his homecoming. Mm, So yeah, it's
Yeah.
Toronto's always been a fun team to watch. You guys got a great GM.
Yeah, well, it's not it didn't help us today. It didn't help us it hasn't helped us for a while. I'll always remember that championship year and
Yeah. Well, I'm a little I was rooting for Toronto last night because we needed the Warriors to lose in the standings.
yeah, yeah.
I was like, damn it, man.
Yeah, I'm not a Warriors fan at all. Sorry,
No,
I'm not a LeBron fan, not really a Lakers fan. Though I don't
totally
know if
fine.
you I have you watched baseball before?
Little bit. I'm like I always teeter between the Angels and the Dodgers on that one, but I'm like I'm not in it enough as much as I am in basketball.
Yeah. I just want you to know this. I don't know if you know this, but you know how like every other baseball team looks at the Yankees?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's you know that that's how we all look at the Lakers, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
We're
As
pretty
long as
over.
you know that, as long as you understand that,
Dude, ev- I joke about it. We call it, our Laker fans call it the Laker tax. It means
yeah.
that every single team, even the lowly Washington Wizards, gives you your best punch.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
have to, because you always have the weight of 17 championships on you, and
yeah,
people are always going to give you their best punch. And you always have the one random role player from every team who's like totally nobody and then goes off for 30 points against the Lakers.
yeah, yeah. And he's like, I'm 10 times the player than your average player, but because you guys are the Lakers, you'll still win.
It's the Hollywood effect, and I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that like we haven't robbed the Sacramento Kings of a championship. I'm a pretty self-aware Laker fan, man.
Oh man, that's hilarious. Well, that's good, man. That's good. As long as you know. I feel like yeah, as long as you know that. In hockey, it's kind of different because it's always a mixed bag. There's no like nowadays, I feel like in the sport, there's no like long-standing just domination of a fucking team. Like there's
No.
obviously like there's the competitiveness with like obviously and it's so weird too because everyone talks about LA like they're just like number one all the time, and it's
Mhm.
not that. But
Hmm.
I don't know why. Yeah, I guess maybe it is the 17 championships, but
It's the championships in the modern era, and it's a lot of players that my dad has always said that it's like that the Lakers had a lot of players, even in comparison to the Celtics, that were hated by the league or they like robbed other players in the league of championships. Like, how many people did Kobe screw over? Like, Kobe dropped 81 on your franchise. So
yeah,
you have
yeah,
a
yeah,
right to be mad at our franchise, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
like,
I don't feel that way about Kobe though. I
yeah,
do about LeBron. LeBron actually embodies what I don't like about the Lakers. That's why,
LeBronto.
yeah. So that's why I have that distaste. I don't feel the same way about Kobe. I have a
Yeah.
lot more.
I know you and I don't, but I know there's a lot of people before Kobe passed away who were like, man, like Kobe did the Spurs in, robbed them of a few championships. He robbed Reggie Miller of a championship, so the Pacers
Yeah.
don't like us. The Kings, uh, obviously the Celtics, like can't get past that one. And
They're
just
just
like
brutal, man. Boston is just brutal.
yeah, and then like the Showtime Lakers robbed a lot of people of titles too. And I think similarly, a lot of people. One of the things that always cracks me up is the Bulls never get the same perception as the
I
Lakers.
was gonna bring up the Bulls, man,
Because
because of
Jordan,
Rodman.
because Jordan, they should
Rodman,
hate the Bulls
Jordan.
in Utah because of those back-to-back years. They should hate them.
Yeah.
They don't.
Well, and they had a lot of just trolls on that team, dude, for so long. They just had trolls.
Yeah, man, those Michael Jordan stories just never get old. Like him, like grabbing players off like the treatment table and saying like, I just played on like a broken, like a sore foot or whatever like that, and you're here getting treatment, like get your ass up, and like punching
Yeah,
Steve
yeah.
Kerr in the face. And that was, man, you could have a whole conversation about cleaners and closers and stuff too. Like, just it's crazy. Yeah.
But that is exactly what I meant about like the type of people that get to the top do not get along with the people that are average. You
No,
know,
I
they just
no.
are, they are not, they're almost not human.
Yeah, I don't think that people like Kobe, Wade, and Jordan are like they're like way up in that category of like not humans. Like they're in that cleaner category of like controlled rage, like this is what I just have to do. I know that and I think LeBron is like he's great and all, but I think he's a tier below. He's definitely a closer because like lets his emotions get the best of him, things like
I was
that.
gonna say just the word tier means a lot to him, probably.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Um, but like hearing the stories that you hear about Kobe and Jordan and Wade, they're just like in a tier of their own, like in a
Yeah,
class of
just
their own.
yeah, D Wade especially because every time I feel like my joints hurt, I think like, oh, D Wade, man.
Dude, the guy played without an ACL for most of his career, and I just that was the coolest thing about Relentless was like going into how he went to Trim Grover and he was like, how can you fix my knee up so I can get through the rest of the like the series against the Thunder? And then he came back like kicked their ass and stuff. Like, man, yeah, people forget about D Wade, man.
Dude, the coolest part about that was how he basically, I'm pretty sure it was that story. Maybe it was a Kobe story where the surgeon's like, I can get you, you have two choices. Like, I can get you to perform for the rest of this season, or I can get you to perform for the rest of your life, but you can't have either. Like, you can't have both. Like, the
Uh,
recovery to last long will be so excruciating that you'll probably miss the rest of this season, or we can get you in tip-top shape to just push through this season, but it's going to destroy your fuck. I'm pretty sure it was D Wade, wasn't it?
Gotta be D Wade, yeah.
And he's like, let's win this championship.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, honestly,
so
who wouldn't do the
fuck.
same thing? Who wouldn't do the same thing? Like you're at the foot of a championship, like put your chips down and go for it. It's badass.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd have the guts to do it, man. I think it is badass, but I just feel like, dude,
Yeah. Now that I
imagine,
think about it. Uh,
imagine.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, imagine that. That's all. I don't know. I've
Well,
never been, but the thing is, as well, I've never been put in the opportunity to have something that exceptional.
me neither. Like if I were in a position where I was competing at a level where it's like you have a chance to, I can get you in shape to get into top five at this 200-mile race. Like you can do it. But it's gonna put you out potentially for a few years of your career, or you might never be the same runner again. And I'm like only 5 or 6 years into a career that I want to have for like decades. Then I start weighing the idea of like, do I want to put myself in infamy forever, or do I want to like rebuild myself and knowing that that opportunity may or may not come again and like give myself more opportunities down the line. And like that is a hard choice to make for sure.
Yeah, it depends on how important the current battle is. Because I know, like for myself, like especially in the sports that I compete in, like when I get caught in a submission at a local jujitsu competition where I'm like trying to see who the best uh adult blue belt that's under 195 pounds that shows up to this university gymnasium on this given Saturday. We're gonna find out who the toughest one of us is. Like, it's not really worth injuring myself for like some sort of like regional
No, no.
competition, you know? Like it, so like when I like for example, last week, like my back was feeling off halfway through the competition and I just forfeited my next match. I'm like, it's not really worth it. Like I have to go to work in 2 days. Like my back is fucking hurting right now. Like it's just not really the same caliber as an NBA championship. So like it's
Definitely.
I guess it depends on the payoff, right?
Depends on the payoff.
All right, brother. Well,
Yeah.
it's been a good 2 hours just sitting here chatting with you. I know that you've got some stuff to do before you before like 5 o'clock tonight, I'm sure, but I got to get to the grocery store as well. I'm getting kind of hungry, so
All
I'll
right, brother. Yeah, I think I'm gonna grab some food too, but it was great chatting with you, man.
likewise, brother. Thank you very much. I appreciate you, man. Every conversation that we have, I feel like recharged after.
Yeah, same here. I feel pretty good right now.
I'm feeling good, man. All right, bro. Well, I'll let you go. Thank you very much for chatting with me today. I know we got a little bit off topic with basketball stuff, but it is what it is. I love it. I don't
Me
mind that at
too.
all. So
Same
much
with you,
love and
man.
peace out, brother.
Much love, brother.
Peace out.